What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at how Leicester narrowly missed out on a Champions League top 4 position in the English Premier League because of a loss to Tottenham Hotspur on the final day. Now, before we start, check out my book. It is out. There's a link to it on Amazon in the description below, but let's get right into it. In possession of the ball, Tottenham, they played with two central defenders and they created width through their fullback as we highlight their back four. So when Tottenham were playing with their back four with two central defenders in the build-up phase, it allowed their double pivot to then have more freedom in their movement. So a lot of times Højbjerg would drop between the two central defenders, collect the ball in possession utilizing the central corridor, and Harry Winks would then become the single pivot. But also many times Højbjerg and Harry Winks played in the cover shadow of the two forwards and then manipulated their blind spot and were the focal points of third man movements, pulling the Leicester City midfielders further forward and undoing the vertical compactness. Whereas Leicester, they played in their usual 4-4-2 with James Maddison going slightly higher, Tielemans alongside Mendy for most of the game, with Ndidi dropping as a central defender. But we can see how Tottenham overloaded the half space and used the Leicester pressing strategy to then find third man movements and find free players between the lines. With Leicester's 4-4-2, it gave them strong access to the wide areas, but it often left the central midfielders in the near side half space overloaded with too many players to cover, and gave Tottenham Hotspur's numerical superiority between the half space. As we see here, Harry Winks and Harry Kane both occupying the half space in their four-man midfield, thus creating numerical superiority, which is often their route of progression, and with Jamie Vardy having the dual role as well of pressing the central defender to prevent circulation and using his cover shadow to block access to the central midfielder. They often became overextended in the half space, which then led to finding the free man of Harry Winks or Højbjerg to then further progress between the lines. When Leicester City were in possession of the ball, they too had two central defenders of Sancho and Ndidi for most of the game. Castagna played as the right fullback, who often joined them to create a back three, utilizing each of the central corridors and creating a 3-2 structure in possession. So Tottenham countered this with a 4-4-2 with Kane and Dele Alli playing as the two furthest highest players forward, and the four midfielders behind them had the job of jumping to the double pivot when the two forwards couldn't block access to these players, and they also had the job of maintaining vertical and horizontal compactness to limit the space in between the lines and gain a high level of spatial control, with James Maddison playing through the left half space and Ndidi often dropping into the right half space, but often prioritizing the space between the defenders rather than the spatial positioning in terms of which corridor he dropped into. In transition, Leicester looked particularly dangerous in their 4-4-2 because of the numerical option it gave them when they would win the ball back. With James Maddison staying slightly higher up the field, he was a focal point in transition through the half space, and with Iheanacho and Jamie Vardy with their pace and directness for running in between the lines, it often left the two Tottenham central defenders exposed in transition, and it's something I don't think Leicester exploited quite enough of, given the opportunities they had when they did win the ball. With the lack of counter pressing Tottenham had higher up the field, that Leicester missed out on a few big chances to hurt Tottenham in transition because of the numbers they had and the qualities of players to then create a 3 versus 2 against the Tottenham central defenders. And finally, Leicester played in their low block quite often in the 4-4-2 with Ndidi joining Sancho, and they were often a very narrow back four with a bit wider midfield four, which created some strange dynamics within the game, with the midfielders leaving a little bit larger gaps between them for entry passes between the lines, but with high vertical compactness, this often wasn't utilized as much as it could have been, and often with the lack of width created by Tottenham, the horizontal compactness of Leicester wasn't stressed enough, and the overextension wasn't emphasized from their defensive point of view because of the lack of width Tottenham created when they were in possession. So that's the analysis, guys. Wanted to get a video out to everybody quick. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.